Alright, so we're back here again, and we've actually already shot something that's going to go out like 2 or 3 weeks after this, because I think this one's supposed to go out like on my birthday or around my birthday or something, which is still like a couple of weeks from now. But yeah, this is another one that I feel like we've been kind of wanting to do for a while and kind of been somewhat talking about vaguely. There was a couple of years where I was just going to do it myself, but I kept thinking like I feel like it'd be better suited if we did it, because I felt like for a while there you were much more into at least the first two Predator movies before I really got much into them at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then with Prey just coming out, I talked in the Prey video about how I didn't really have passionate opinions about the Predator movies because I've only seen them like a handful of times each. And Shane Black's movie only twice, I think. So I thought I should go back and revisit those and then come to this conclusion, whatever comes up. And even though I just talked about Prey, we're also going to talk about, you just watched Prey for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So probably towards the end, because I figure we'll go movie by movie. You'll be able to say what you think of Prey, and I'll probably be able to just reiterate what I said because I don't really think my opinion's changed in the short amount of time it's been since it came out.
And spoiler alert, if you like Organization, you'll like this video. You may not be as big of a fan of the one that follows this one if you like Organization.
Yeah, the one that's coming out that we just shot that'll probably go out on Halloween was pretty crazy. We'll try to be a bit more organized now, but yeah, the chaos is fun anyway, and there's plenty of chaos in these movies, even if we are going in order. So, should we just go ahead and talk about the first movie?
Yeah.
The John McTiernan movie with Schwarzenegger.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think, are there any repeat actors in any of the movies? Are they? I think they're all completely different casts, aren't they?
I believe so.
That's pretty wild.
I think the closest is Jake Busey and Gary Busey. I think that's the closest.
Yeah. I love that you bring up that example because, interestingly enough, you have not seen Shane Black's movie.
Mm-mm.
And I'm sure everybody watching this will talk about how lucky you are. I said, I'll kind of run you through.
I didn't know it was Shane Black. That's a shame. Shane Black usually does quality stuff.
Yeah, it's his first bad movie.
Oh, man.
And of all things, and it's one of the sequels to a movie he's in.
Mm-hmm.
He's the first one killed by the Predator in this, in the first one. So, what are your general thoughts, since you were kind of more of a Predator fan before I even got into it?
Well, before I get into the movies, I think Shane Black's mistake was he didn't cast Downey. That probably would have helped.
It's his good luck charm, or Ryan Gosling or Russell Crowe.
Yeah.
Well, no, Downey had a cameo in The Nice Guys, so yeah, you're right.
Yeah, Downey's the secret, man. Downey's the secret. But no, the first one, and it's funny because I don't really consider the Predator movies horror movies. They're more action movies.
Yeah, like action sci-fi, yeah.
Yeah, and I would consider the first one like a staple of action. It's got all the pieces. You got the director of Die Hard and Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
And you've got Schwarzenegger slaying a monster, and not only that, Schwarzenegger doesn't really win.
Yeah, I guess you could say that, because
Yeah.
it takes itself out.
Yeah.
I'm having so many realizations about this in real time.
I know.
Yeah, when you say here they're definitely more action movies, I do definitely see that, where it's like action sci-fi. I think Predator 2 especially feels like it's like kind of intentionally channeling Aliens a little bit.
Yeah, it did kind of feel like Predator 2 wanted to go the route of Aliens.
But there is also a little bit of, would you say a slasher vibe? A slasher vibe to this one? Because I don't know what fell over, but apparently I disagreed with the slasher comparison.
Apparently.
But the idea of them being offed one by one, which once again is kind of the feel of like how the first Alien movie is often compared to slasher movies. Mm-hmm. And obviously, since we keep bringing up Alien and Aliens, it is worth mentioning that I really have no intentions of... We've talked about all the Alien movies at this point, and now we're going to go through the Predator franchise. I don't really have any intentions anytime soon of talking about Alien versus Predator, because I fucking hate both of them.
Oh, man.
I think the first one has a slightly more positive reputation now than it did back in the day, but Requiem is still one of the worst movies ever. It's just a black screen for an hour and a half, pretty much. But I don't like either one.
It's a shame, too, because both Alien and Predator set themselves up for a pretty cool face-off. You know, there's a comic series where Batman faced off with them, right?
Good God.
Yeah, that's a thing. That's a thing. Look it up.
Somehow I'm both surprised and unsurprised.
I mean, I haven't read the comic, but I mean, if I was gonna have to fight a Predator, I think I'd want some of Batman's prep work in there.
Oh, something real quick I noticed before we go into like the specifics of the first Predator movie. Something else I noticed about all 4 movies that was really insane to me, because I have the Blu-ray 4-pack that has all 4 of them in it, and so you just turn it over and it's like all 4 of them, and their stats are like lined up there. With the exception of Predator 2 being 1 minute longer, all 4 movies are the exact same length.
That's crazy.
Isn't that fucking eerie?
It is weird.
It's almost like, I wonder if it's on purpose or not, but I don't know. Prey is shorter. Prey's like an hour 40.
Prey was really short. Like, Prey, when I watched it, it felt like it went by pretty quick.
Yeah, I think it's about an hour 40, but then all the others are an hour 47, and Predator 2 is an hour 48, is what it said. Which is, it's really weird.
That is weird. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so how do you feel? I feel like I'm seeing articles written like every other day about how well Predator is aging, the first movie. How do you feel about that as far as it being like this 80s action movie with Schwarzenegger and now being like seen as this staple in pretty much all the genres it represents?
I mean, I think it's a case where I think it's just a good character that they haven't really had to change the character of the Predator.
Yeah.
There hasn't been any major... Like, every movie monster has some kind of development they have to do. Like, Michael Myers becomes supernatural. Jason goes to hell. Freddy gets bigger and all these things. And Predator is still Predator. The first, from the Predator and Predator 1 to Prey, there's not much difference. Slight appearance change, and that's it.
Remember how I said pretty much everybody hates Shane Black's movie?
Yeah.
Shane Black's movie kind of is the start of us going away from that, where they are starting to kind of change and evolve in certain ways.
Yeah. And plus, I'm like, it's also a lot like Alien, where, the Nemesis in the first, it's just one of them.
Yeah, it's the first one. I think a lot of the acclaim for the first one comes from just the simplicity of it. And I feel like
it's disgustingly simple.
I was gonna say, I feel like we've actually talked about this a lot, where it's like, there's a lot of franchises that have gotten so big, and all you can really say at the end is like, wow, when they were really simple was when they were at their best.
Yeah, and look at the cast you had around. You had a great tough guy cast. You had Schwarzenegger, you had... Carl Weathers, thank you. I wanted to say Billy Dee Williams. I know that was wrong. You got Carl Weathers, you got Jesse Ventura, you got Bill Duke. I mean, you got your 80s tough guys.
Shane Black, not so much, but it's kind of the point of his character that he doesn't really look tough. But don't you kind of love that opening scene when they're all in the helicopter, and like they're not even talking about the job. Like pretty much any other movie like this, especially any other movie that came out at this time, would be like the helicopter scene would be, okay, this is our mission, and it's just kind of all of them talking and kind of showing off their traits. But it's like they're showing off their traits here, but there's no need to talk about the mission now because they all know it. And the mission's just a MacGuffin plot anyway to get us to the Predator. Yeah. The entire first half hour of this movie is a MacGuffin plot.
Yeah.
And it's like, and we have that stuff where it's like they just show off kind of their different personalities.
You know what it kind of reminds me of? I guess this thing would, like, Predator... I'm out of order here. The thing I'm thinking of came later, so really it probably took it from Predator. It kind of reminds me of the first scene of James Gunn's Suicide Squad.
Yeah. When
they're in the plane and you're just kind of learning about them.
Yeah, like Gunn probably took from that.
Yeah.
And took homage to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, and that's that thing too, where it's like, and honestly, going even forward to movies that were like extremely acclaimed and prestigious, like Pulp Fiction, where one of the reasons Pulp Fiction was so praised was because of the scene where Jules and Vincent are just doing their job and not talking about the job. They're talking about anything but. And that's pretty much what this opening scene in the helicopter is.
And I think what's interesting, too, is every horror movie up to this point that had a slasher, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, you had a final girl. And it was like teenagers that were getting taken out. Like, it was like people doing stupid things. These are fucking commandos.
Yeah.
And they're just getting wasted
and I love
by this Predator.
And I love how it's especially built up because the whole thing is kind of building up like how big and tough they are, and how seemingly like
it's very like that fucking handshake between Schwarzenegger and Carl Weathers.
The arm wrestle handshake that's now.
Yeah, you see like when their hands come together, like you just see the testosterone burst out. Like, that's what it does.
And it's like you almost like. This is also one of those movies where it's a lot of time it's praised for like how macho it is, like being one of the most macho movies ever. But now that we know, like, Schwarzenegger's willingness to go satirical, how much of that was tongue-in-cheek. And I'm sure Carl Weathers was in on that also. Like especially when you look at like the Rocky movies and how borderline parody they became, almost seemingly intentionally, in a way.
Yeah.
It was very sincere, but also. But you kind of get that sense where there is a fine line there, and you're wondering like how much of it actually. I feel like that's one of the great mysteries is how much of movies like this, especially this one, is a little bit tongue in cheek about how macho it is.
Yeah.
And even in talking about going satirical, like when I say Schwarzenegger's willing to go there, think Last Action Hero, who directed Last Action Hero,
John McTiernan.
So there's got to definitely be something there. Jesse Ventura, I feel like, is the kind of guy that might take himself too seriously and might have taken it to that full approach, but that also means that he was perfect for this cast. So and perfect for that character. And seeing and like we were saying also about Shane Black being here, how it's like kind of not all of them are. We'll kind of get more into this in Predators, but the fact that it kind of feels like not all of them are like exactly the same size. And like I said, and then when you were saying when they bring the girl in, there's like this sort of shift in it, but at the same time, still everybody is, no matter how big or tough one character is more than the others, it's all kind of equal ground here of who's going to get taken out. Like nobody has an advantage against the Predator, which is amazing. And so you get the iconic moment where it's like, you know, if it bleeds, we can kill it. And it's like this badass line that's like, yeah, we're going to kill it. And it's like this whole build up of, yeah, we're going to fuck shit up. And like we're going to just blast everything in sight, and then that's when they start getting offed, one by one.
Yeah. I do love that they brought that line back for Prey, though.
Yeah. And how like, even the significant change in background, somehow it feels like it belongs in one just as much as it belongs in the other.
And I think it's because it's the isolated wooded environment. As opposed to, where's the first one take place again?
I'm not good with location.
Is it Central America, I think?
Yeah, that sounds
somewhere in
right.
Central America. And then you've got Prey that takes place in, like, pre-colonial America.
Yeah, they literally alternate where it's like, the first Predator is in the jungle, the second movie's in the city, the third's in the jungle, the fourth is, I wouldn't say it's in the city, but it's in, like, a regular area. Like
there's people around.
Yeah. And then Prey isolates us again. So it's like it's this perfect sort of back and forth. And then yeah, I do still think there are definitely horror elements in it, like when they first find the skinned bodies. There's definitely something to that. And the way they're kind of stalked. I love the way they portray, especially with 1987 effects, the fact that the Predator's invisible like the first time we see it, and when it attacks and kills Shane Black, and they're talking about how like it's the whole surreal quality. This is especially apparent in Prey because Prey is set so much farther back in time, but how out of place the Predator's technology is with the background of the movie. Like when you think about Jesse Ventura getting killed with like these futuristic looking projectiles, and it's like the last place you expect to run into futuristic projectiles is the middle of the jungle.
Yeah.
And then I love the moment when the girl's trying to explain what happened, and the only way she can explain it is the jungle came alive. Because all they saw was the jungle reflecting off the Predator when it attacked. And it's like, how do you react to something like that? How do you describe something like that? And I love that they were, like, you just write something like that in a script, and I can imagine, especially in 1987, it's like, how do you bring that to life? And they found the effects that do, and they look like 1987 effects, but they still look very good for 1987 effects, and get the point across.
It doesn't take anything away from the movie.
Yeah. And if anything, like I've been really finding a lot lately that dated effects are kind of starting to have a bit of a charm to them if they're not too bad.
Yeah.
Where it's like even if you can tell they're from like effects from another era, there's something like it's just part of the movie's personality almost. And then there is the idea of, like I said, when the characters kind of take it seriously. Like, do you have a particular favorite character moment in the movie itself? Obviously, Schwarzenegger's got all of his one-liners.
Mm-hmm.
I keep forgetting that this is the movie where Stick Around came from.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to, like, ask me, like, months ago, I would have probably sworn it was in Commando. It's like there's kind of a gray area here sometimes for me as far as where Schwarzenegger's one-liners lay.
There's nothing really that comes to mind that I can think of.
The one that I'm thinking of is Bill Duke's monologue, where it's like, you're in this, where I talked about, taking it seriously versus being tongue-in-cheek. But tell me, when Bill Duke does that monologue, it doesn't look exactly like a scene that would have been in Platoon.
Yeah.
Or something.
That's
and
true.
And it works because of that. It's an amazing moment. And Platoon was just the year before. And it's like I can just easily imagine just that scene being there. But what do you think about how it uses like lack of dialogue after a while?
It does help build the tension because like it becomes definitely more show don't tell because there's nobody for Schwarzenegger to tell. So we just kind of have to watch his mind process and like I think it definitely makes it more it makes it more realistic.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of movies where people are on their own like that, but they still talk to themselves and they speak the plan out loud. And Schwarzenegger is just like, he's not going to turn to the camera and say, "Oh, I'm doing this because of this." Like, we get to figure it out. Like, we figure out his plan as he's putting it together.
Yeah, and they build that up so well that that's in character, by the way, that once they know the mission, they never talk about the mission. They just do.
Yeah.
And that's what Schwarzenegger does.
And Schwarzenegger's on his own for a good chunk.
Yeah. Because towards the end there, before people were starting to get off, there is some silent tension, like the moment even though it's not like they don't go like fully into it, just that image of Bill Duke pressing the razor against himself always gets me. It's like I just can't look at. Of all the gore that's in this movie, that's the scene where it's like, oh god, don't do that. It's like we just saw a few skinned bodies and saw Carl Weathers' severed arm still firing after it flew off. Is that foreshadowing the handshake at the beginning?
Maybe.
And then Weathers loses his arm.
Maybe.
And that's another thing, too, is a lot of the deaths start to get off-screen, kind of. At least a few of them. And then, we get to the point where Schwarzenegger's by himself. And I love the moment when he's in the mud, hiding. And there's the moment where the Predator's, like, looking directly at him. And we're not quite sure if he detects him or not.
Yeah.
It's like you can actually feel that from Schwarzenegger's perspective.
The end scene there where they fight before, they get into the fight. Schwarzenegger's hiding in the mud. That's great suspense.
Yeah.
Great suspense.
And it doesn't feel like traditional action for the time, because they're not just straight up throwing down like you might expect.
Yeah, and it's crazy because they're both like, it's symmetrical because they're both hiding in plain sight.
Yeah. And they have to like, instead of like kind of beating the shit out of each other, it's more about outsmarting the other.
Yeah, it becomes a battle of wits.
Yeah. And I like that that's something that's kind of continued throughout the series. That's like the one thing that I held on to, because that's something that's really unique to the Predator and how you have to approach him.
Yeah, because it's not something that you can just beat with brute force. I mean, the first one establishes that by taking the manliest motherfuckers out there that are commandos, and brute force wasn't enough.
Yeah.
And by the time you get to Prey, like, it might seem kind of implausible if, like, let's say, for example, Prey came first, and, it's this little Native American woman that takes out the Predator. It's not very believable, but when you look at the series and realize that it takes smarts to beat him, she's a totally plausible opponent.
Yeah.
It doesn't come off as ridiculous or disingenuous because her size has got nothing to do with it. It's your ability to outsmart the Predator and your ability to just keep fighting and survive.
Yeah. And the survival skills definitely come into play.
I mean, I would say every movie, I haven't seen The Predator, but every movie that I saw sets the expectation that you don't defeat the Predator, you survive the Predator.
And then and it's a cliche to say it. Like, the movie doesn't feel cliche, but I mean, to say this phrase out loud is a cliche. But when it's down to one person fighting the Predator, it's like the perfect personification of the hunted becoming the hunter. And it's like, and the way they go all in on that with, like, I love the, like, that's one of those cases where it's like, you want them to go all in and they do. I just love the shot of Schwarzenegger holding a torch and just, like, roaring into the woods. It's like, is that not one of the peak Schwarzenegger moments of his whole career? And it's and the fact that he has to become as animalistic as the Predator is in order to beat it also. Where it's like, where it is all about the smarts and all that, and, like, having the skills. But it's also like your mind has to get there also, so that you have the courage to face it at all.
Yeah, and all of the humanity left in you died with your comrades.
Yeah. Yeah, because he does feel very much like a shell of himself when he finally gets away. Like, it almost barely feels like an upbeat ending.
I remember reading in the trivia for Predator 2 that Schwarzenegger was going to be in Predator 2. It was going to be a scene where he was in the hospital, and I think Gary Busey talked to him, and then after that scene it was going to be stated that he escaped the hospital and just vanished.
That's interesting.
But Schwarzenegger upped his fee and they didn't want to pay him.
No. Yeah, I could take it either way. That would have been cool, and it's also cool the way it is, where it's just kind of mentioned throughout the whole series. Like, this happened, and then they go on.
If you kind of look at the Predator series, where there's not really many connections until Jake Busey comes along, like, there's, like, callbacks, like the gun in Predator 2 becomes the gun in Prey. But honestly, the Predator movies kind of feel like, where they don't have a consistent character throughout, they almost feel like an anthology series. Like, this is the time that these people came in contact with the Predator. Here's what happened when these people did it. Like,
and the fact that it's not, like, the same Predator.
Yeah, and you know me, I love my anthology stories.
Yeah.
I love anthology movies. And that's probably why I took more to it than something like Alien that does have a consistent character and story throughout. But I like the idea of every new outing with the Predator, I get to learn new people and see what their skills are, and everybody uses different means to win. Like, Schwarzenegger uses his skills and his wits. Danny Glover's just fucking no-quit psychotic sometimes. And they build him up to be that way, with him being kind of on the rough side of being an officer.
Yeah.
Predators, you have multiple people with multiple skill sets going in. And then in Prey, you've got this Native American woman that has a completely different skill set from any of them because she didn't have the advantages of technology that the others did. Yeah. So it's like it takes a different approach every time. It keeps the story fresh. You're not beating the Predator the same way every time.
Everything feels like a standalone movie.
Yeah.
And the references to the previous movies are so vague that they're not, like, completely necessary.
Yeah, it feels more like a I know this phrase has been beaten in the ground to death, but it's more like a Predator cinematic universe. And I think I just think that's why I take to those movies more.
Yeah. Yeah, this is all, like I said, I've only seen the Predator movies like kind of a handful of times, so all of this is like kind of coming to me in the moment. And it's like my appreciation is growing as we continue to talk. And your observations especially. Is the last thing to bring up about the first movie, you were there the first time when I saw the first movie for the first time, and you got to see my reaction in real time to the laugh.
It's a great laugh. It's a great laugh.
That was terrifying.
The Predator in himself, or herself, we don't know.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I kept saying
as Andrew Garfield Spider-Man said.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I kept saying him. I guess it's an it. So.
But I think the thing that also sells the Predator, his presentation is so fucking cool. He's got a cool laugh. He's got cool technology. He's cool looking. The fucking dreadlocks is awesome.
Yeah.
He has a mask that conceals his face most of the movie. It's like Jason in that way, in a way. But like his presentation is just so cool.
Well, I'll give you another reason.
He's a cool monster.
I'll give you another reason to not like Shane Black's movie Sight Unseen.
Let me guess. He goes maskless throughout. He speaks. How do we ruin it?
Um,
I do like when Predator speaks, though. Like in Predator 2, when Danny Glover's like, "You're one ugly," and the Predator responds with "motherfucker."
Yeah. Oh man, they messed. Shane Black fucked that line up too.
God
But
damn it! Maybe it is good I didn't watch this.
Well, the thing I was talking about was a character in the Predator makes the joke that that the Predator is Whoopi Goldberg. So that's like that, and honestly, that's like the least of the bad lines. but we got 2 more movies to talk about, and then I'll tell you all about the Predator. Should we go on to Predator 2?
Yeah, let's go to Predator 2. Hi, Bill Paxton.
Yeah, and let's go into the future. Interestingly enough.
Yeah, the movie's 3 years later, but they say the events are 10 years later.
Yeah, because it was released in '90, but it's set in '97.
Spoiler alert: Predator 2 has my favorite death in the series.
That could be a number of things.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's the despining, but we get tons of despinings.
Yeah.
But it's as it goes on.
Do you want to know what it is?
Yes, I do.
It's Gary Busey's decapitation.
Nice.
Yes.
I was thinking he got his whole body got split in half. Was it just decapitation?
It was just decapitation.
Oh wow.
Because
Okay.
because Danny Glover gets his attention to try to help Gary Busey, and Predator just goes like this,
Yeah.
and that's it. Like, it's just a really cool death. It's my favorite death in the whole series.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I liked also that you didn't go obvious with the despining.
Yeah.
Is it because we see the despinings a lot?
Yeah, it's not unique, and there are other
There's-
people that get decapitated in Predator, but it's just the way he just nonchalantly does it. It's like Danny Glover makes this distraction for nothing.
And
It does nothing.
And it's right after Gary Busey made a triumphant return from
Yes.
the dead.
Yeah.
You got to appreciate the Busey arc though, because what's interesting to me about Predator 2 is it's essentially a cop movie that a predator got dropped into.
You know what it feels like, especially in the beginning with the guy that's with him in the SWAT, who's his boss in Lethal Weapon? It's like Lethal Weapon.
Yeah.
It's like they merged Murtaugh and Riggs, but kept the appearance of Murtaugh, and he fought a predator.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like. It feels like a
And
Lethal Weapon movie.
And he even has the moment like the whole idea of him being afraid of heights feels like a very Murtaugh kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I like the way that's played in also. I like how he like literally guns a guy down, just like it's the job, and then it's oh shit, there's a height here. That would totally be me, by the way. Be like all the other extreme aspects, I could probably handle it. The heights, fuck off.
Heights are out.
Yeah. And he even has like his Jimmy Stewart moment towards the end when the predator's hanging off of it. But oh yeah, what was I saying about? Oh yeah, I was talking about the Busey arc. About how this is essentially a cop movie that a predator just kind of falls into, and how the Busey arc is the fact that Busey's essentially an antagonist in the cop plot, but then when the predator plot comes in, he has a bit of a redemption arc as a hero. Like it's actually a triumphant moment when we think he's died, and then he hasn't. And then, like you said, it's all the more funny that that's how he's taken out.
Yeah, because it's like once Danny Glover finds their little hideout place, like Busey like invites him in. He's like, grab a chair, watch a show. Like you know what's going on, so there's no point being a dick anymore.
Yeah.
Just watch what we're doing.
And I also like the added tension of setting it to where like there's droughts and there's like heat waves and you can see everybody's pit stains just all the time.
Yeah.
And it's like with that sort of heated thing, like where it's literally heated, the characters are gonna like be more tense anyway, and then you throw a predator at them and shit's gonna get crazy.
Not to mention the fact that the city is pretty much a war zone.
Yes. I love the moment at the beginning with the reporter who's just like trying to report and then just says, "Get me the fuck out of here."
Yeah.
And then you have what was his name? Tony Pope, the Morton Downey Jr. essentially playing Morton Downey Jr., who is also talking about another Downey Jr. Giving off Wayne Gale vibes. And like that's kind of and what is it called? Hardcore. As 2 words is the name of the show. It's like that's kind of a fun character to throw into all this other chaos, like a Wayne Gale type. Even though Wayne Gale came 4 years later, still that's my
And
my
what's
go-to.
interesting is the way that it ups the ante is we still have one predator, but Danny Glover's essentially fighting the predator and the city.
Yeah, and you got the whole drug dealer thing going on. Don't you love the sort of mirroring that when the drug dealers are torturing that person, they have them hanging upside down like the predators do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, that's not symbolism at all.
Mm-hmm. And then when Danny Glover and the cops show up, everybody's upside fucking down.
Yeah. And we get cool moments like a nice off-screen decapitation where he like traps the Jamaican guy in the alley, and then it's the Jamaican guy screaming, and then we don't realize a cut has already happened, and we realize we're looking at his severed head as it's being carried off. That's a really cool cut.
There's another cool moment too. I read this in the trivia too, that it was originally going to take place in New York, and the shot of the Predator like yelling on the building with his spear, that was supposed to be on the Chrysler Building.
Interesting.
That building is much bigger than the one he was on, I think.
Actually, am I thinking of a different scene, or isn't he holding a spine with a head on it in that scene?
Yeah, it might be.
Yeah.
It might be.
I can't remember if that was the Paxton spine or somebody else's spine. Because the despinings get more frequent as the movies go.
They start to run together.
Yeah.
But Predator 2 keeps another tradition alive. Train scenes are typically badass, if you count the subway.
I was just gonna say, I remember I saw Predator 2, and then there was a long time before I saw it again. And when I saw it again, like, the thing I remember the most was the train scene. And how well done it was. And it's like the way they were able to, like, because you would think, like, how well is it going to work taking them out of the jungle? Because the jungle seemed like such a perfect setting.
Well, they just went to an urban jungle.
No. Yeah, how poetic.
Yeah.
And you wonder, like, how they're going to utilize the city background, and it's like, I actually often find that kind of cool. Like, you know, people say what they will about, like, Jason Takes Manhattan, but it's like, just seeing somebody we're not used to seeing in that kind of environment in such a public background is always really interesting to me. And where it's like so many more people than usual have to deal with this thing and witness this thing that sounds like a myth, if nothing else. It's like I said, he's got such a mythical vibe already in the first movie when they say that the jungle came alive and that's what he is. And now it's everything else. The urban jungle or whatever. And then we also get stuff where it's interesting to see a predator in like very eerie circumstances, like the cemetery, when Danny Glover goes to see Ruben Blades' grave, and the kid is there, and it's like the kid thinks he's seeing a ghost. Yeah, and it's like that's kind of creepy, actually. Yeah, and then it's doubly creepy. I think this comes back in the train scene when the voice recording that he takes is the kid saying, "Do you want some candy?" And so I believe it's the train scene where, like, out of the darkness, we're hearing a child's voice say, "Do you want some candy?" Yeah. And then people get fucked up. It's like, there's horror lurking in these movies for sure. The Predator finds a way to cross as many genres as it can. It can, whatever you want to call it. But like we were saying, this one in particular kind of has an Aliens vibe, right? And I don't think it's just the Paxton-ness that's here. Though we have obviously the popular observation lately is it's interesting that Paxton got killed by all three of the major sci-fi villains with the Alien, the Predator, and the Terminator. It's like, good for you, Bill Paxton. You live on in so many ways.
You absolute legend.
You live on by the way you died in movies. Yeah.
I also like, too, that I guess I was lying before. We do kind of add a characteristic of the Predator at the end of this, and it's so interesting to see a movie monster that can offer a level of respect.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel, like, cheesy.
No, it just feels like the Predators were like, okay, you got us. Here's a trophy. Now, get the fuck out, because we're leaving.
Yeah, because typically that would be, I mean, it still is, kind of terrifying to be in that situation where it's like, oh shit, yeah, I can't get out of this, and then it's like, oh no, we're cool because
yeah, you're an equal to us because you took one of us out.
But production design on the ship is A+. Just throwing that out there.
Did you know more trivia from Predator 2? Did you know that the other Predators are on the ship are referred to as the Lost Predators because after that scene finished filming, the Predator costumes disappeared and were never recovered?
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Horror. I'm telling you. I am telling you. It is crossing over. It's crossing out of the screen. John McTiernan and Schwarzenegger aren't even here anymore, and stuff's coming out of the screen.
Speaking of production design, I know this is more costumes, but this is still cool too. Same line in the trivia. That shot was really expensive to get because they built individual Predator costumes that were differentiated so that way it didn't look like just multiple of the same Predator. They added different features to it to distinguish them. Including the elder one having a little more damage to like his armor, and one of his little dreads is missing.
I don't want to sound like a bitter old man. Mm-hmm. But Jesus, you just do not see that kind of effort anymore.
No. For one shot like that.
Yeah.
For one, how long was he in the ship with all those guys? 3 minutes? 5 minutes?
Yeah, something like that. It feels like that anyway. Because the climax is good.
Yeah.
And it's like, if there's one thing these movies seem to always get right, it's like the final fight especially. Mm-hmm. Because for all the reasons we already talked about. Mm-hmm. So is that Predator 2 in a nutshell?
I think so. Predator 2 is definitely a worthy successor.
Yeah.
It was one that I didn't appreciate fully until I rewatched it. And I'm not talking about the one I just did. I'm talking about a rewatch I did years ago. Oh. I already had the respect for it when I rewatched it this week.
Yeah, I feel like I remember you like going through this period where you were like, I don't know if you were trying to convince me or what, but I remember you like acknowledging that you really liked Predator 2 at one point.
Yeah. Yeah, and now that you've seen it, what's your opinion?
Yeah, I like it pretty well, and especially the way we're like I said, we're kind of meshing worlds is something that these do really well.
Yeah.
And like say, kind of meshing like a cop movie with a Predator movie. Mm-hmm. It's like these things where you're like, they sound cool on paper, but they also would have been really easy to fuck up. And
there is some comedy too. Like I love the scene when the Predator's in the bathroom stitching himself up, and the lady's just like cautiously waiting outside, and the Predator roars, and she's just like, oh. But like where she lives, she's not totally phased enough to run. It's just like, oh.
Yeah. And there's the whole thing about how like they don't attack unless they're like under threat. Mm-hmm. It's like that's another trait we didn't really talk about that's kind of unique. Mm-hmm. And it's
it gets a lot of people out of getting killed.
Yeah. It's also used to an interesting degree. That's something that we'll get there. That's the Predator thing. So do we go on to Predators?
Sure.
It's funny, we were talking about how Predator 2 was like, are they trying to be aliens? Mm-hmm. And it took 2010 to get a movie called Predators. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember when this one came out, and
this is going to be fun because we're on different ends of the spectrum on this one.
Yeah, I'm very curious how this is going to go.
Because keep in mind, I haven't seen The Predator, but I think Predator, Predator 2, and Prey are all stronger than Predators.
Do I drop my bomb now, or do I wait?
Go ahead.
This one's my favorite one. So this should be fun. I'm curious where you're coming from, and so I'm excited to do this. First of all, worth noting that this is when Robert Rodriguez got involved, which feels fitting, and Nimrod Antal, the director, a very underrated director, if you ask me. He did Vacancy, and he did like Armored with Matt Dillon, which is it's kind of a throwaway movie, but I kind of really like it anyway. It's like the perfect kind of movie that I like for just being as simple as it is.
You want to know a funny story about Predators?
Yeah, and just...
when I watched it and the Troublemaker Studios logo came up, I was like, I think that's Robert Rodriguez's. And then when I saw Danny Trejo, I was like, yep, it is.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's like what he used to like put out Spy Kids and stuff.
Spy Kids, Shark Boy and Lava Girl.
Yeah. So it's like, it is weird to see it in front of this of all things.
Planet Terror is more fitting.
Yeah. And then I was talking about how I feel like this director is really good at simplicity. So going into this, first of all, could you get a more attention-grabbing opening? Literally, the scene opens and our main character is in free fall, and then they drop into the jungle and they immediately start getting shot at. I mean, how much more intense can you open? And then going from there, yeah, once again, there is a simplicity to this one, where it essentially becomes the old plot of being hunted, and like being hunted by another power of sorts, but essentially by predators also.
I think part of my issue with Predators is I feel like the concept is too similar to Predator 1.
I can kind of get what I like about this one, as far as it being different in its concept, is that obviously things are revealed pretty quickly, maybe a little too quickly. But the fact that there's a mystery angle for like the first half hour of how do we connect and why are we here and who dropped us here,
Yeah.
and like that whole thing.
But to me, like, I got kind of a and this is probably undercutting it a lot and oversimplifying it. But I felt, to me, the plot kind of felt like somebody watched The Condemned and was like, "Oh, what if we put Predators in it?"
Well, that goes all the way back to The Most Dangerous Game, which is however old. Yeah, and but that's also a thing where it's like, that is a sort of concept that's been used so often. But that's another thing also where it's like a cop movie or whatever, or a war movie, taking a concept that's familiar and putting a predator or multiple predators into it. So I kind of just felt like a new variation on that to me also. And it gives us a hell of a cast.
Yeah.
This one is, would you like really argue with me if I said this one might have the best cast?
No.
Because obviously, the first cast is hard to beat because they just felt like it. But what I found interesting about, particularly the casting of Adrian Brody, is that even though Brody did get like beefed up, I think he put on like 50 pounds of muscle or something. Still, the idea was for him to be a contrast to Schwarzenegger, because Rodriguez and the director were talking. They basically said, like, soldiers who look like they do in the first movie is really kind of a movie thing, but if you were to like actually see soldiers just like out in the jungle, they wouldn't be like huge muscle dudes. They'd be about Adrian Brody size and the rest of the cast. Who else is here? There's Topher Grace in all of his mystery. Alice Braga, yeah.
Walton Goggins,
Mahershala Ali, Danny Trejo, Lawrence Fishburne. I feel like I'm missing people too, and there's probably really obvious people, but yeah, and one Oscar winner and one future Oscar winner, multiple. Still going by his full name in the credits, and yeah, seeing all these people together and like their different personalities, because the great thing about this is you have a lot of heroes in the first two Predator movies. And it's implied that most of these people are bad guys, especially Walton Goggins and everybody else. So it's like, these are people that are killers, they're rapists, and it's like, so there's kind of a line drawn here to where it's like, as far as there being weight to their deaths. Because the argument could be, I don't care about these people, so why should I care if they die? Well, for starters, it's a Predator movie, so people probably look forward to the first question is, the first two questions are, who's going to die next and how? That's a question. And then it's like, even if they're all characters that are evil in certain ways, to varying degrees, there's like the magnetism of the actors themselves and the characters being entertaining, where it's like Walton Goggins is like one of the worst people, I would say, on Earth, but they're not even on Earth. And it's like, but when he's done in the movie, it's like there was a weird. It's kind of hard to say because the character's so open about, like, oh man, I can't wait to rape bitches, and like when I get home, it's gonna be like, is it 5 o'clock already? It's time to rape some bitches. It's like only lines that Walton Goggins could do and make them entertaining.
Has there ever been a time that Walton Goggins was the good guy?
Yes, I am sure there is, and because I'm on the spot now, I'm gonna blank. But I know he definitely has at some point.
I think there was a TV show that he did, that he's like the dad or something. I'm pretty sure he's not a villain there.
But yeah, but it's like having the entertainment value of the actors and their characters and how they kind of play off each other. And it's like there does feel like gaps when people start getting offed, and like the chemistry of the cast and all that. So I can get past the whole, like, most of them are murderers and shitty people, and it's like, is there weight to when they die? It's like, yeah, but I don't really feel like there's weight necessarily to most of the deaths in any Predator movie. There's not like a death in a Predator movie that's like sad.
I just keep debunking the statement I made earlier where I said the Predator doesn't really change, because I just thought of something else that Predators introduces, and that's classes of Predator. Like where Fishburne's explaining where they hunt the other ones.
Yeah. And
that statement's proving more false every time.
And that's something that's a little expanded upon, well, somewhat expanded upon in The Predator. And also the idea of introducing new creatures that we hadn't seen before also is something that starts here. And I'm kind of okay with that here, because it does feel like, to kind of go on your point though that you're making at the start was, it's evolution, but it's not like like it's not derailing the series with new shit. It's just like a little bit of evolution. Yeah. And not too much. I
mean, let's face it, if Disney had control of it, there would be a sympathy story coming out for the Predator along with Cruella and Maleficent and all those.
I gotta be honest with you, I'd be really curious what that would be.
I don't want it.
I don't think anybody does.
I love that we don't know anything about the Predator.
Yeah. I'll take like a written treatment of just completely out of morbid curiosity.
I'm sure there's a comic out there somewhere, because this Predator became very prevalent in comics for a long time. So I'm sure there's a comic out there that explains the origins of the Predator.
Yeah, probably.
Where they're from, what their government's like. You know, for all we know, maybe it could be no different than fucking Remulac. Who knows?
That'd be interesting. Maybe I would watch that.
For those of you who don't know the Remulac reference, that's Conehead's home planet.
Yes. But yeah, I love the introduction of characters like Fishburne, where it's like, he shows up and it's like, we don't know if he's an ally or an enemy. He's talking to an invisible person. He's not quite sure how long he's been here. And characters like that, like characters like Tim Robbins in War of the Worlds or something, when characters come in like that, there's always some sort, like, even if it's kind of a cliche type, there's always something interesting, because you never can quite predict where those characters are going to go, or how long they're going to last. Usually they don't even last very long, like Fishburne.
Fishburne's death's really good, too.
Yeah. Where he just explodes into nothingness.
Yeah.
That's fucking wild.
Yeah. And the way that he's just like, you finally caught me.
Yeah. And then there's stuff like Nikolai is a character that, like, you know, like goes out triumphantly, where he's like an unsung hero of the team.
Before we go further, let me preface this by saying I don't dislike this movie. It's just my least favorite of the ones I've seen.
That's fair.
But I don't dislike it by any means. I think it brings a lot to the table. I just prefer the other three. I think they're much simpler. Yeah,
and it does, and like where it does feel like there's a lot of action in it, and like development or attempts at development. But it's like when they have the Alice Braga character is here, and I feel like it's kind of effectively like a much needed dose of humanity amongst all these really shitty people. Like there's the moment, like Danny Trejo's death scene, where it's like semi-spoiler for a very minor character in Breaking Bad. This is not the first time that Danny Trejo's dead body has been used as a trap. But the idea that he was using them to lure everybody in, and then the way she just like mercifully shoots him. And I also love the shot where everybody's walking and Brody's the only one that doesn't look back. And it's like that kind of sets up this, like, kind of Brody's character in a way. Like having this coldness to him, where he's seems like he's seen shit like this before, even though not quite this exact situation.
And it carries through to the end when he wants to leave Topher Grace behind.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, the woman injecting the humanity, I would make the argument that the prisoner in the first one kind of did the same thing, just not as much of an active role.
Yeah. Yeah, because Alice Braga gets like, what, 2 or 3 monologues? Yeah, I think I was just going to kind of reiterate what I was talking about, how, like, you know, the idea of all of them being bad guys, but then there being these doses of humanity, but it's like it still feels like everything has this quality of, where it's like this sort of, I don't know if you'd say amplified version of the, like, it's almost like the macho-ness from the first movies being replaced by, like, inherent evilness that's in a lot of these characters, especially, like, the really hardened criminal ones. But I know what I was going to bring up. Something that really pissed people off about this movie was a trailer moment that didn't happen. Where it's like, it was the one trailer moment where people are like, oh shit, what's that scene gonna be like? And there's the, do you remember anything about the trailer for Predators?
It's been a long time.
I think it was the last shot in the trailer, so it was like the big money shot. The laser targeting, and how you can see it, and it's like, you know, somebody's fucked. There's a shot at the end of the trailer, one of the reasons I don't watch trailers anymore, of Brody standing there, and like a shitload of them appear on his body like at the same time. And then, like, the trailer stops there. And that scene is not in the movie.
No, it's kind of like they recycled it for Fishburne and then just had him kill him.
Yeah. And that pissed people off. So, and yeah, talking about... You mentioned to me earlier off camera that I always loved the Topher Grace twist. The fact that he does seem very unassuming, and you keep asking, like, why is he there? And then you just kind of go with the fact of, oh, he's like a doctor of some kind. I guess that makes sense. It's like he kind of knows what's going on and what's what. And then it's revealed that he's like the most insane of all the murderers. And your problem, which I can agree with, is that this twist comes in way late.
It comes in way late, and you see it from a mile away, because the very first scene, like, Brody sets it up. He talks about Topher Grace. He's like, I don't know who that is.
Yeah.
He knew everybody else, but he didn't know him. So to me, like... Even though I knew the twist, I was still like, man, you see that coming from a mile away. I think you're just waiting for it. And I think at some point you almost forget that he's an unknown until he just randomly turns heel.
Yeah. And it's like, I do think if there had been, like maybe with like half an hour left or something, and like where it's the case of like...
Or maybe do a slow build. Like maybe be the reason that Fishburne gets caught by the predators is because... Topher Grace sets it off looking like an accident.
He does look... That scene is kind of where he starts looking really shady. But I love the way he reveals himself by saying, like, it could have been better written, but the general idea of when he says, like, you know, at home on Earth, I'm this, like, insane murderer and I'm out of place, but when I'm here amongst monsters, I'm normal. It's like, that's cool. That's a cool thing for a murderer to say. And then and the fact that Topher Grace is so unassuming, because honestly, I think even though it's short-lived and we don't really get to see much of it in action, really him being insane is mostly in dialogue. The only thing we really see is him paralyze Alice Braga.
Yeah.
But the thing there, and I love the way after he's been like taken out. And he's still laying there when he's got all the grenades attached to him, or the explosives attached to him. The Predator just like walks over and just stabs him lightly while he's still alive. It's like, are you still alive? And it's just like this very nonchalant, like it just looks like he's poking him, but it's a full all the way through stab.
Hey bud, you go. Oh shit.
And then and just how pathetic he sounds when he's like, "Hey man, I'm one of you." And, like, that's his last thought.
Yeah, but at the same time... Well, I guess the grenades would count, because I was going to say, was he really a threat, though? And they don't take out the threats, but I guess that the grenades would have presented a threat.
Yeah, and I was going to say, in, like, the 1 minute we see Edwin as a villain, do you think Edwin is scarier than his Venom?
Probably.
It's like, give him credit somewhere. I was trying to think if there was anything else. Oh yeah, I just want the samurai scene is very cool. Where it's like a scene out of a samurai movie where you got like the tall grass and the katana and all that. That's a very cool scene in the way that they fight. That I can really appreciate, and the fact that they kill each other is kind of very cool, because you expect that the predator's going to kill him, but it's actually kind of surprising that they managed to kill each other as it goes on. That's also the upside of having multiple predators, is that you can off them when need be, and for dramatic effect. But yeah, we were talking about how strong the climaxes are of all these movies, and I do love the final confrontation with Brody and that last one. And they bring back the kill me thing that Schwarzenegger was doing, where I like the fact that they were trying to contrast his character with Schwarzenegger's, but there's also like how they're also very similar, and how like their smarts and how they fought him, and then even saying that same thing, and channeling him, I thought was kind of effective. So, was there anything else that you had on Predators, or?
Nothing I can think of.
So I'm coming to terms with the idea of like you saying you don't dislike it. It's just when you line them up. But it's kind of always been my favorite, I think, and I don't know how controversial that is, because obviously the first one. There's actually quite a few people coming out saying that they think Prey's the best one now.
I would put Prey at 2, honestly.
Are you still a 1 at the top person?
1, Prey, 2, Predators.
Well, that said,
Mm-hmm.
would you like to hear about the Predator?
I mean, you've already told me so many wonderful things.
Oh, we're not. I haven't told you anything. Okay, so here's the thing. For starters, the movie begins with like a Predator amidst a space battle, like in his ship, and he's like desperately hitting buttons as he's crash landing onto Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And I gotta be honest, this might seem pedantic just right away, but I gotta be honest with you. Seeing Predators in their ships, like operating and moving around like they normally would when they're not hunting, not very cool. Yeah. They're not very...
Yeah, because you don't want to see Predators do a mundane thing. You want to see them de-spine and decapitate, not fucking drive their car. It's not what you want.
Well, with that said, there is a cool moment here after he crashes. Whatever they are. Our main character is Boyd Holbrook, who, he was the villain in Logan, the guy with the arm.
Yeah.
He's the one that comes, like, into First Contact, and there's a whole thing here, and there's a guy hanging from a tree that's been killed by the Predator, like the guy that Boyd Holbrook was working with, and then the Predator's going invisible, and then the Predator gets injured and, like, falls, and it's just, like, laying there, like, unable to move. And during this fight, one of the discs got loose and cut this guy's body in half hanging from the tree. And so, since the Predator is invisible in this moment, it's the blood raining out of this guy's body that reveals him just laying there and staring at Boyd Holbrook. It's like, that's pretty cool. And every now and then the movie does have a cool moment like that. Every now and then. But it's also got a lot of weird shit going on.
That sounds pretty cool, but I think Prey had a really good version of that too. But we'll get into that later because there's a sentence I can't wait to say.
So continuing, so the idea now is that since we have a Predator captive, it's like, oh, we have all this technology, we can study it, we can do the Independence Day stuff.
I thought of Independence Day when you started describing that.
Jake Busey, and this is essentially Brent Spiner in Independence Day.
Oh, man.
And it's, yeah. And he only lasts for this scene, too. He gets killed pretty much immediately, by the way. I kept wanting to say that when we were talking about, oh, Gary Busey and Jake Busey. It's like Jake Busey has, like, one scene, and then gets killed immediately. So it's like, yeah, we're going to take all this, but Boyd Holbrook kind of jumps the gun and is like, I'm going to ship off this equipment. Like, he has the mask, and he has, like, the thing. And he's like, I'm going to ship this stuff off. And for a reason I can't remember, it ends up at his house. And his son is Jacob Tremblay from Room. He was the baseball kid in Dr. Sleep. Good boys, all that. And he has autism. And he gets made fun of at school. He gets bullied. Like, the bullies approach him and they say, hey, you know what I'm hungry for? Ass burgers. Make of that what you will. And so, yeah, so they really drive home that...
So that bully wants to eat shit.
Apparently.
Okay.
But, yeah. So Jacob Tremblay has autism, and this does become a plot point. But in the meantime, he wants to hide from... It's Halloween, and he wants to hide from his bully so he doesn't get bullied while he's out trick-or-treating. So he's like, I need a mask that completely covers me. Lo and behold, the package shows up with the Predator stuff in it. The Predator armor in it. So Jacob Tremblay, tiny little Jacob Tremblay, decides, I'm going to wear the Predator helmet trick-or-treating. And, of course, the Predator helmet has all the stuff inside. It's got the weapons attached. There's a point in time where it's got a gun mounted, the gun mounted on the shoulder.
Yeah. That
only goes off when it senses a threat. And so, like, there's like a moment where a guy is up here throwing a water balloon at Jacob Tremblay and he's like, yeah, fuck off, loser. And the gun turns around and blows the house up. Which I gotta admit is fun. And then, yeah, obviously that makes a big scene, and Sterling K. Brown and the government come in. And Sterling K. Brown's the one that wants to... He's the villain of the movie because he wants all the technology. He's acting like a villain through the whole movie, but I can't quite figure out what his motivations are that make him the villain of the movie. But he is clearly the villain of the movie.
So he's like a less well-done Gary Busey.
Yeah, basically.
That's a shame, because Sterling K. Brown's really good.
Yeah, and he's definitely... He made a choice for this movie. And it's like, if you didn't know he was intended to be a villain throughout the movie, he has a cackle throughout this movie that continuously shows up. For a while there, he's just like, you know, the guy that's there observing. But then as it goes on, it becomes clear that he's like kidnaps Jacob Tremblay, and he's like going after them, trying to kill their team. Mm-hmm. And it's like his theory is that the predators are aware of climate change, and they get the idea that the reason they come to prey on us is for our DNA to improve their species. So they sense climate change is going to destroy us all, so they're coming now before it's too late, and they want to wipe us all out and take all of our DNA.
That's way too goddamn complicated.
Well, tell Sterling K. Brown.
Well, here's Sterling K. Brown. How about this? They just crash landed on a planet, saw that humans were mostly incompetent, and was like, well, I might as well have some fun.
So now that we're on that complication, would you like to go ahead and know how autism comes into this?
Sure.
You could probably figure it out if you thought about it enough. Basically, the predators see it as autism is, I wrote it down here.
Like an evolutionary trait?
An advancement in human evolution. So he's able to communicate with them, essentially.
You know, there are people that have made that argument.
And so, like, when he puts the stuff on, he, like, knows everything about the technology already, essentially, and, like, what they're saying.
I don't think that's how that works. I only, work with people with autism for a living, but I'm not quite sure that's how it works.
So,
I don't think it's a pass for your brain. I don't think that.
So so the two things I just said are essentially the concepts of the movie. On top of the fact that there are predators here that are hunting other predators. The big payoff in this one is that we actually get to see a predator do the despawning to another predator.
Now that sounds cool.
So it's got that. It's got a new creature called predator hounds, which are essentially, they're kind of like the creatures in Predators, but they're like giant dogs with predator heads.
All right.
One of these days you'll have to Google image. it's kind of a hoot.
I think I'll do it right now, actually. I'll be back.
But there is another character in this. Actually, there's many characters in this movie. Actually, while we're on the topic of the way the movie portrays autism, how much do you know about Tourette's? Because Thomas Jane has Tourette's in this, and it essentially...
Is this it?
Yep.
What the fuck?
That would be a predator.
What the fuck? It looks like... Oh my god, it looks like somebody smashed a dog in the face.
So I don't know. I don't know what's worse, those dogs or the dogs from Ang Lee's Hulk, but they should have a fight or something. But it's yeah. So
they don't hold a candle to Vince Clortho and Zool.
Yeah. But yeah. So Thomas Jane has Tourette's, and he's basically able to use this as like how anger based is Tourette's?
I don't know a lot about Tourette's, to be honest.
Okay, because he's one of those characters where, like, he has Tourette's, but then, like, when Keegan-Michael Key wants him to do something, like, when Keegan-Michael Key wants him to break a door down, like Chunk in The Goonies, he, like, taunts him, and then, like, Thomas Jane, like, rages at him, and they say that's part of his Tourette's. So
I don't know.
It doesn't sound accurate, but I'm not a doctor.
I mean, I don't work with anybody that has Tourette's, so I don't know.
So, yeah, we can't judge that, but... It doesn't sound right, does it? And if it does, and apologies if it is correct, by the way, in a sense.
If it is, that's why I am saying I do not know. I am not an expert.
Yes. So yeah, as I mentioned, we have Keegan-Michael Key and Thomas Jane. They're the ones that are kind of like have like a bit of a partnership here. Alfie Allen's kind of in here. Trevante Rhodes is in here. This one's got another good cast. But how this cast is utilized is... I can't remember if this was like a test audience thing or a Shane Black thing or what, but I remember it being like there were multiple versions of this movie at one point, and this one is essentially trying to be a comedy. So there's a lot of this movie where we have our... Well, here's the thing. We have two particular locations here. We have a motel, and we have Boyd Holbrook's house. And you have this team of people. There is a large portion of the movie where the whole team is just in the motel throwing seemingly improvised funny lines at each other like it's an Apatow movie. And then there's kind of a long scene when they're at Boyd Holbrook's house doing the same thing. There's another character whose actor I don't recognize named Nettles, who's like trying to be the comic relief of it. You got Keegan-Michael Key in this movie, and this guy thinks he's the comedy relief of this movie. But even Key's stuff isn't really working much. Like, all the comedy, like, attempted comedy lines, they just don't belong.
Oh, man.
They just don't
You bring
fit.
up Keegan-Michael Key, all I can think of is now I want to see Jordan Peele tackle a Predator movie.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure he'd like to. I'm sure he's got some treatment somewhere.
Go for it, man. You do good work, Jordan Peele.
So a lot of it is them standing around talking, but there's one more character I didn't mention.
Is this character going to make me get up and walk away?
It's one of my least favorite characters, and I don't know if it's because I don't care for this actress. I do not think she is a good actress. That's Olivia Munn. Mm-hmm. And she's like the sort of scientist that comes in.
Is that the one that dated Aaron Rodgers?
No, I think that was Olivia Munn's the one that just had John Mulaney's baby.
Oh.
The one that was in X-Men Apocalypse.
Yeah, I think she dated Aaron Rodgers.
Okay.
I think.
So I really don't care for her as an actress, and this movie might be a big reason for that.
No, Apocalypse is too, because you were going off about Apocalypse earlier.
So
you called it exhausting.
Okay, so you know how we were talking about fan service lines? Mm-hmm. At some point, Trevante Rhodes says, "Get to the choppers," plural. No, that's not the worst line at all. That's not even close to the worst line.
It's not even the line that's iconic. It's Schwarzenegger's delivery.
Oh, wait till you hear what I'm about to tell you then. What do you think Olivia Munn says when she... Remember I said how they have the alien laying out like it's Independence Day? It's unmasked because Jacob Tremblay has the mask, and she gets right up to its face. What do you think she says?
I'm guessing it's not "you're one ugly motherfucker." I'm guessing it's some kind of variant.
"You're one beautiful motherfucker." I don't know.
No.
Shane Black, you were literally on the set of the first movie. What happened? What the fuck happened? And not only that, you don't even have to have been on the set of the first movie. You're Shane Black. Okay? What
Better
happened?
than this, man.
What happened? Nobody knows what happened. The movie's a mystery. How it got to this point. But, what else is here? There's another fun decapitation. Mm-hmm. There is, since that's another theme. There's a point in time, I think this is right around the time Alfie Allen gets killed. Because that's the thing, too, is one of the things about having a team is having them offed one by one. Mm-hmm. That's been the theme up to this point, right?
Yeah, that's standard slasher stuff.
You know, the team is pretty much alive the whole time, and then it's kind of all at the last minute. In like the last 15 to 20 minutes here, they all kind of start getting offed, kind of in quick succession. Where like Alfie Allen has a blink and you'll miss it death. Keegan-Michael Key and Thomas Jane kind of have a moment where Key gets like wounded and thrown against a tree, and then Jane gets thrown and impaled towards the top of a tree, and they're like this. And because they're like, you know, buddies, I guess, and they're like on their dying moments, in this silent pact, they decide to shoot each other. It's like, I can see there's something, the execution is off, literally, but I can see where that could have been a moment. One of the best things is another blink and you'll miss it death. Sterling K. Brown has a good death. And it's very, very quick. He decides he's going to team up with the team now, after we've had a big confrontation. When they decide they're going to use, like, you know, Predator weaponry to go into this battle with the other Predators. And so Sterling K. Brown gets the shoulder-mounted one, and of course this thing only fires when it senses a threat. So there's stuff going on, he's using this, and he's like cackling like a maniac, and then Olivia Munn comes right over here and points a gun at him and says, "Hey," and when he turns his head to look at her, the gun turns its head and his head just explodes. And it's like, and it happens in a fraction of a second. Do you want to know how quickly it happened? I'm going to be completely honest with you. Like, full disclosure here. The first time I saw the movie, I completely missed it. Like, when I left the theater, I was like, what the fuck happened to Sterling K. Brown?
Oh, man.
It's like, he was the villain of the movie, right? Yeah, it's literally a blink and you'll miss it death. but when I finally saw it, I was like, oh, okay, I can get behind this death. And, like, the fact that it's so quick actually does make it pretty funny. And the fact that he essentially did it to himself.
In the true fashion of a predator.
Yes, of course. And then we get this big, aerial climax where it's trying to fly away and boring shit. It crashes. Everybody dies except Boyd Holbrook and Olivia Munn and the kid. And they do this little send-off that's supposed to make it emotional, like you were attached to the characters when you really weren't. They just all stood around and joked for long periods of time. So I think that pretty much sums up the movie. We get one more origin. And honestly, I don't know that I noticed until it was brought up. Have they never been called predators through the first 3 movies?
Gary Busey called him one and Predator 2.
Are you positive?
Yep.
Okay. Because I felt like there was a moment where they were being dramatic, like it was the first time we'd ever heard about it. Because Sterling K. Brown says, like, here's the predator. And she's like, why do you call it a predator? It's like, well, first of all, dumbass question. Mm-hmm. Just simply for a reason for it to be answered. There's no reason to ask that question. It's very clear that's what it does. But his response is, they all took a vote and it sounded the coolest. So.
No, in the first one, Gary Busey almost says it in passing. He's
the
like,
second one?
Yeah, in the second one. Gary Busey says it almost in passing. He's like, we've been monitoring this predator and...
Did you miss that one, Shane Black? I'll bet he did. I'll bet he thought he was the first one dropping that, because that's what the scene felt like. So that's the one that you missed. How do you feel?
I feel like I didn't miss much.
Okay, isn't that how I tell you feel?
Yeah.
All right. So you mainly get. I'm actually gonna go. This is the notebook I had my Prey notes in when I first talked about it.
That's convenient.
Yeah. So. Yep, there they are. So, yeah, tell them how you felt about Prey. They already know mine if they saw that video.
I really enjoyed Prey. I think it's nice to look at.
Mm-hmm.
I think the characters are cool. It's a nifty situation where the Predator has all the technology. It's literally the Predator against bows and arrows and hatchets. And probably the coolest scene in a Predator movie. The Predator rips a fucking bear in half. And the blood from the bear drips down onto the Predator to outline his... So fucking cool.
That's what you thought was cooler than
the
the shot in the Predator.
Yeah, so fucking cool. He rips a bear in half. It's amazing. But no, I love the characters. The girl is really great, really resourceful. I think it could have definitely been seen as let's have the Predator fight a girl, because we don't really see that much. But no, they gave this girl a reason to be a competent opponent.
And they needed, like they were trying to do with Brody and Predators, they needed somebody that sort of matched what Schwarzenegger was bringing without the physical, like the imposing nature of his physicality. Mm-hmm. And something that I just couldn't help but keep pointing out was, did you ever learn this actress's name? The actual actress's name?
It's something Mid-Thunder or something?
Amber Mid-Thunder.
Yeah.
And it's like, cast a lead in this movie with a name as cool as Arnold Schwarzenegger. Amber Mid-Thunder is a badass name.
Yeah.
She herself sounds like a comic book character.
Yeah.
And she has the badass nature to fit the name, it turns out.
Yeah. I love, I just think it's a nice looking movie.
Yeah.
It's and I love the way, fog is used, and how it just feels so isolated in the woods. The scenery is really nice, and it's not repetitive.
And when you think of a movie that went to streaming, you would think something that was kind of cheaply thrown together, like a Netflix movie. Mm-hmm. And it's like I said, the thing I was just really taken by immediately was how just, the whole setting was just real.
I was shocked after I watched it when Susan told me it was a Hulu original.
Yeah.
I had no clue. I thought it was theatrical.
It was like real sets, real backgrounds, real extras, real people.
This movie, it's a shame this movie didn't go theatrical because it would have looked really nice.
Yeah, and like I was saying, like it seems like way, way high praise, but I mean, I feel like you don't see this as much anymore. That shot at the beginning where they're walking through the camp is like a shot out of The Revenant or something. It's like it's that well done and feels that lived in and real, and like of its era, like of the time that it's set in too.
Yeah.
And that's something that's hard to pull off because so many movies that tried to set themselves like back then just feel like there's still something too modern feeling about them. But like everything and everybody feels like it's at the time that it's actually set. And once again, like we were talking about before, the jarring nature of seeing a predator dropped into this, and just like the contrast of the background and the being and his technology is wild. Also, I always want to throw as many shout-outs as I can to Dan Trachtenberg, the director, who had only done like 10 Cloverfield Lane before this, and we had to wait forever for him to do a second movie. And of course, a lot of times on your second movie after your first one is that good, you drop the ball and it's shit, and it was this instead. It's like, thank you for being great at your job.
I also like this one too because the threats that the Predator takes out, like in the other movies, it's like the first one, it's other soldiers, and the second one, it's drug lords and stuff like that. And this one, he starts taking out animals.
Yeah.
And we start seeing that's like where that practice kind of begins of collecting skulls and spines.
Yeah. A lot of predator-prey imagery going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially, like, I love the scene where the predator's invisibly watching the wolf chase the rabbit, and just as the wolf catches the rabbit, he just gets smacked out of the way. Yeah. And the wolf has no clue what the hell happened.
If I remember correctly, wasn't there also a really cool snake scene that was similar? Where it's like all this is going, but like nature's just being nature, and just like every now and then you can see the outline of the predator just being here.
Yeah, he's just observing.
Yeah. And it's like that's the kind of stuff that I felt like really strengthened this, where it's like they were able to not just go all out and try to make some big action movie. And
it's also interesting too because the way that the tribe perceives it is every other movie, it's like, oh, they're not human, they're not of this world, and all this. And this Indian tribe just thinks it's this random animal that's in the forest, that it's like, well, there's this weird thing out there, maybe we should find it.
Yeah, because doesn't that also call back to when Shane Black was the first one killed in the first movie? When they see his body, the first thing they think is, God, what animal did this? It's like, they're not completely wrong.
Yeah.
I said there is a very sort of animalistic / humanoid thing going on here between both the Predator and the human characters, especially in the first movie.
And I love the callbacks too of how many times, I think it's 2 or 3 times, that I can't think of Amber Midthunder's name in the movie. I can't think of it off the top of my head. But there's a couple times she's covered in mud.
Yep.
That happens a couple times. She falls in this like quicksand swamp thing.
Yeah, and the fact that it basically is like a survival movie before, like we're seeing all the foreshadowing of what she's going to have to use in order to beat it. Like we basically get her skills origin story, and then we get to see her put all those skills into motion.
Another really cool shot that I liked in the movie is when she's covered in mud towards the end, and the Predator is walking towards the person, and she just slightly sidesteps out of the way.
Yeah.
And the Predator just walks by. Like, that's really cool. That's a really cool way to... That's a cool, different, inventive way to portray that Predator doesn't see her.
Yeah.
It's a cool, different way to do it.
So that's interesting.
And the way that, like, when she sidesteps it, there's no fear. It's like she knows he's not going to kill me. I'm just going to move out of his way so he doesn't know I'm here, but he's not going to take me out. And that's like in this one too, I didn't see the Predator. It sounds like this could have happened in the Predator. Is this the first time that we've seen a Predator take a point-blank range headshot?
It could be. There's a lot of chaos going on at the end of the Predator that I can't know the complete choreography of, but this might be, yeah.
And it's like she like in Predator, or not Predators, Predator 2, like Danny Glover gets the disc and he used that to help beat him. I don't remember in Prey them using any of the Predator's technology against him. They just used what they had.
Yeah, at the very last moment, when, if I remember correct, I haven't rewatched Prey since I watched it the first time, so I'm a little rusty on it. Especially after having gone through all the others. Did she not use his helmet to ultimately kill him?
Maybe she did.
I think so. But that would have been.
I was thinking his helmet was more like a cloth thing, though.
Maybe, well, I like I said, I'm a little vague on it, but yeah. But like even if that's the case, it was just like the final payoff and everything else. I could be remembering wrong, by the way. I probably should have rewatched it, but.
And I love the ending where it kind of comes full circle. How the Predator likes to do his decapitating. The movie ends with her throwing the Predator head on the ground.
Yeah.
And she's used like his blood as war paint. That's really cool. That's a cool visual.
And I have to say that what I said earlier is something that this movie kind of corrected, where I said there's not a death in a Predator movie you can consider sad. And this one was it her brother, I think, was the character that was...
I believe so.
And like how he had this big dramatic death scene and like kind of went out in his little blaze of glory. I consider that the closest thing we've had to a sad Predator death.
Yeah.
Like one that actually had weight to it and like affected the characters. Because because everybody else is either like, just... Well, we talked about Schwarzenegger being motivated by being isolated and coming from the everybody else being killed, but this is one where it felt like a really deeply personal connection, like a sibling or a family member.
Danny Glover's partner.
Ruben Blades, yeah, that's true.
Because it's you were talking about the creepy scene in the cemetery. The necklace just dangling there just sets Glover off.
Yeah.
And it's like it's like the Predator's taunting him.
Yeah.
Like, I dare you to become a threat. I dare you to make this gun go off.
So is that the gist of Prey? Did we say it all?
Yeah, I mean, Prey's pretty simple too. I mean, you have the scene in the camp where like the settlers kind of get their comeuppance because of the Predator. That doesn't feel cheapened in any way at all. I love the random callback to Predator 2 with the gun.
Yeah.
Because it's very weird that that's the one thing that got called back, but it's kind of cool still that that gun got an origin story. It's pretty neat.
Yeah.
But like you said, just the fact that it's the Predator in a completely different environment that we've never seen.
Yeah, and as we mentioned, none of those callbacks feel like crutches.
Yeah.
Like Olivia Munn saying, "You're one beautiful motherfucker."
Yeah. Yeah. The only callback line that I can think of was, "If it bleeds, we can kill it."
And as we already said, it feels like it fits here.
Yeah. That would be the mindset of people that had a little simpler mindset back then. Not saying that they're simple, but like they didn't have everything to process that we have now.
Yeah. So is that it? Is that the Predator franchise?
I would say so.
Minus the Alien vs. Predator movies that I don't give a shit about. Do you give much of a shit about them?
Not really. I don't remember much about them.
All right. So yeah, if this goes out on my birthday like we're planning, then I don't remember.
Did you rank them? I don't think you ranked them.
Well, it's hard to say because, like I said, Predators is my favorite one, as controversial as that may be. And this is cheap, but I almost want to say Prey and the first movie are pretty much right on par with each other. Maybe. That's really hard to say. I don't know. But then there would be 2. And
But how far down is 2 from 1 and Prey? How much of a gap is there?
There's a little bit of a gap. I like Predator 2, but there is a gap. And then the Predator is in hell. The Predator, I was gonna say maybe it's not as bad as it sounds, but yeah, like when despite those stupid things that I mentioned, I don't actually. Maybe this is because of what I've talked about before about how I never really had a passion for these movies, and I've only seen them like a handful of times. But like, I don't feel like rage when I watch The Predator. I just kind of watch it and say like, that's dumb, that's stupid, you fucked that up. But I'm not like raging about it. So, but I can imagine if somebody did have passion for these movies, they probably hate the Predator significantly more than somebody like me does.
I think what also helps too is the reason that for the most part, most of them were pretty well liked is because the first Predator came out in what, 1987? We are 35 years from that. Not counting the AVPs, there's been 5 Predator movies in 35 years. That's not that many.
No.
That helps keep the idea fresh.
There was a massive gap between 2 and Predators.
Yeah, 20 years. Right? Predators was what year?
Yep, 2010, yeah.
Yeah, 20 years.
Damn.
And I think that's what helps Predator stay fresh. Is there's not movie after movie after movie after movie.
Yeah, because Alien versus both Alien versus Predator movies were in between, but those don't count. So is that it?
Yeah, I mean there wasn't much of a gap between the Predator and Prey, but it definitely sounds like Prey needed to exist to put things back on track.
Yeah, there was 4 years, though I do wonder if we would have gotten Prey earlier with or without COVID. But I don't know.
It's a shame it didn't get a theatrical release because it definitely merited it. But I will go on a limb and say that I believe Prey is the best looking one.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It's the most like cinematic.
Yeah, and it feels like it has like the most grounded environment.
Yeah.
Alright, is that it?
I think so.
Alright, I have no idea what's next. Because like I said, these are all shot out of order now. I'm going into the Mr. Mercedes series. Probably very close to this. Like probably right after this, but I can't say for sure. But that's probably around the corner, and that's the most I can think of right now. And then like I said, you'll be seeing us again when Halloween comes around in a very
Heated.
Yeah, very, very, very stream of consciousness video. And then we'll get to that also. So, if you don't have anything else to add, is that it?
That's it.
All right.